Hello, this is a tutorial of an overview of UE Systems Ultratrend DMS 6. This will be a tutorial of basic functionality of DMS 6. First thing we want to do is open up Ultratrend DMS 6, which I have open already. Not a lot going on right now, as you can see, basically a blank view. So we will open a plant. The way we open a plant is go to File, click on File, Open Plant. And once that opens the window, we'll see that there are many different plants here. We'll choose Hayes Street. All of you will have Hayes Street available to you as an example plant that we built, so you would have something to look at of how to build a plant. Now I'll explain the different levels of the plant. Hayes Street is the plant level. This could be a building, this could be a line, one production line, this could be the entire plant itself with everything broken down under it. It could be one floor of the building. It doesn't really matter how you break it down. Once we get beyond that plant level, you have the application level, and we give you the applications of bearing, electrical, leak, steam, valve, and then one, if you have something that doesn't fit in any of those categories, generic. We'll use bearing to open up the next level. We click the plus sign and we have one route right now under bearing. You could have many routes built under here. Each route holds 400 test points or less. Suggested when you build these routes, 50 to 150 test points. Don't use the whole 400. That's much too big of a route. But in bold is the route name. I'll highlight that so you can see it. And then to the right shows you how we split up the names of the 16 characters to use the location or machine and the actual test point. So this route was built using a 13-and-3 split. So motor 1, INB, inboard bearing. So motor 1 would be the machine or location, INB would be the test point. So I hit the plus sign on that, and we have one machine under here, motor 1. You could have multiple machines with multiple readings here. We also have points currently in. Points currently in is what's in low alarm, what's in high alarm, and that will actually show us what the machine name is and the test points with the baseline reading. You see here 1023 on motor outboard bearing record 1, and the record information for that. I'll tab to that. We can see that reading, and then the actual reading that is in alarm. So that was 52 dB. The baseline, when I highlight that, was 31, so we are well over the high alarm limit of 16 decibels. And it highlights that and throws it into this copied group called points currently in lower high alarm or points currently in high alarm only. These can actually be loaded to the Ultra probes separately from the actual route of mechanical room. Mechanical room is the route or group name. That's the hierarchy level. That's the 400 test points or less. And typically when we run the route, we load that back and forth to the DMS software from the Ultra probes back and forth. But say we went and ran that route and there were 2 test points in high alarm that we wanted to go test more often than the regular route, we could highlight high alarm only, and that would have the 2 test points in there. And I'm allowed to load those separately. So then we go to motor 1. Motor 1 is the actual, I'll close the points currently in so it doesn't look so confusing. Points currently in alarm, that's just a view, or motor 1, which is the actual first test or machine location. Under machine location of motor 1, we have 4 test points: motor outboard, motor inboard, pump inboard, pump outboard. Record 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's automatically assigned as you name this, which you can see in the build a route tutorial of how to do that. Once we open up the test point, almost the final level of the hierarchy here, motor outboard, we see there are icons by it. These 2 actually have pictures. We'll look at that in a minute, but that icon means there's a picture attached to it. I open it by the plus sign, and I actually see we have quite a few readings, 10 or more readings here. Some are in low alarm, maybe it was lubed and fell out of alarm, and then finally in the end, these last readings went into a high alarm status. We see this icon here, the little squiggly lines, time waveform in red with the blue background, meaning there's a sound file attached to that record. If we look at the top, this bolded record, which if it's in bold, kept up with by time and date for the records, we see that this is actually the baseline by the bold. But if we look at the icon, we see there is the time waveform and the picture. So this has two different types of things attached to the record, pictures and sound files. So now we open up the final level of the hierarchy, which is kept up with, like I said, by time and date, 10/23/2016 at 8:31 a.m. and 14 seconds. And we look to the right, and up here we have several tabs. And the record information tab is the raw information from the field. We have date, time, decibel, frequency, everything that came in from the Ultra probe. If we had not created this falsely, so you could see this, you would actually see an instrument 15,401 grease caddy sitting here. If you added the serial number, it'd be sitting here. The rest of it is just information from the Ultra probe. So this is the raw data in this area here from the field. You have a comment box. We could say bad bearing, will replace, whatever you want to type in here, type away, you won't fill it up. And you get a new comment box per reading. You get a new blank comment box. Wave file, if you stored a sound file when you're in the field, it'd be sitting here. You can attach sound files to the record from your computer. Typically, we want that sound file coming in with the reading itself. That's the way it should come in. And then if we hit open, it would open up the second software, UE Spectralizer, with this sound file loaded and ready to play or analyze. The record path is just simply stating which record we're on. Same thing here where it says location, machine, and points. Not where we name it, it's just restating what we're looking at. If we look here, this says baseline and there's a check mark in this box. It's grayed out, it's not active. This means we are looking at the baseline reading, which we are highlighted on the baseline that I showed you earlier. If I come to another reading, let's say this one in the middle, 4/19/2017, there is no baseline checked and it's active. I can check it and it will reset the baseline to that record. And then it grays it out because now if I click away from that, you'll see that this is the baseline record. It's now in bold. I'll move it back because I have everything set up to that original baseline record to show you. So basically raw information in this field. Over here we have the test result column. Most of this you would enter manually, and anything that has a drop down you can decide what goes in it. So test result, INP, inspect, lube. NE is not entered. Other, replacement. You decide what goes in these boxes. I'll show you where all that happens later under the file tab over here. Blank info box, maybe that's the manufacturer of the bearing. Type, what kind of bearings do you have? Needle, split, spherical, ball, roller, whatever it is you could put in there. RPM, depending on which instrument you have, such as temperature and RPM, if you had the 15,000, if you'd have saved that information from the 15,000 with the strobe light and the temp probe on the 15,000, that would already be in there, or you can manually enter it here. Bearing info, maybe it's the number of rolling elements. It has 8 balls in it. All good information if we're going to try to analyze it through an FFT and see a fault frequency analysis. We would want the speed and at least the number of balls to do that. Below, we have added information about lubrication. Very simple, actual strokes. If you're using the 401 grease caddy, you actually have a option to how many pumps of grease you put in it, how many strokes. And so that would download in here, or again, you can manually enter any of this. If we'd have put the mass per stroke and the cost per mass, this would actually calculate the rest of it for us. Then we put a place for grease gun calibration date. When was that grease gun, not the grease caddy, but the grease gun itself, actually calibrated? That could be entered here. So this field is extra information. we'll call it parameter information about the bearing. This field over here in this box is raw data from the field. This is good information. As far as ultrasound, we definitely need a time, date, and a dB, what the frequency reading was, and if there was a sound file. Very important information. And again, some of this other stuff like module type, all good record keeping information for repeatability would be filled in here. Any of these can be filled out on most of the instruments or filled out in the DMS software. And as long as it's filled out the first time or whatever is tagged as the baseline, this will read to the ultraprobe and then back to the software and just repeat itself until you change one of those parameter settings there. So it goes back and forth. Again, if you fill that information out during baseline time, it will all go back and forth, and most of that will be filled in. Some of that stuff is per actual reading that you might want to fill in. So that's the basic raw information tab. If we come over to the next tab, which is images, we have pictures. JPEG, let's hear. We'll look at add. I believe it takes bitmap, JPEG, and PNG images. So we can attach images here. We can do like I did here, use UE Spectralizer, and there's an option to analyze it, make notes on it, and then save it as a picture back to DMS. Or this came in from the 15,000 digital camera. So it doesn't matter where the images come from, we can attach them in here and remove them. Fill it up. You won't fill it up, you won't have that many images here. But that's what this is about. And if we take a look at what we can do with that, you'll see that we can actually use these in the reports, but we can also simply copy them out of here if we need to. So add, remove, and then browse where you might have them located. So that's the image file. Very good for historical information. All right, if we go to the next tab, we have history. I like the history tab. The history tab is a quick way for me to see what's going over. I can see this in the hierarchy, but I can look at it here. So if I highlight history, notice I'm highlighted on a reading here in the hierarchy. You can't have a history of one reading. We can have a history of the motor outboard bearing, so we must highlight that. A lot of the options I'm going to show you, it's dependent if they're available or not, depending on where you are highlighted in that hierarchy. All right, so here I have the entire history of that bearing, all the readings, all the decibel readings, what the low alarm decibel is, what the high alarm decibel is, what the baseline reading is. And then I add from this column over here frequency, because I like to run down through here very quickly and make sure if it's a bearing, we want that same frequency for repeatability. If that has a different frequency, say I saw 25 in there, then that reading, which I'd come and see, let's say 8/22/2017 actually said 25 kilohertz for the frequency. I'd come over here and find that reading, right click it, and permanently delete that reading. Because once we take a reading that's bad, that doesn't match the rest, then that reading's no good. There's nothing we can do to change that. So we want all the same readings. And what this is really getting ready to do is set up a plot chart. Notice we have other things over here we can use and export to print it, to save it, whatever we want to do here through the export button. So I'll click that very quickly and let you see what we can export that as. Basically a spreadsheet. And I believe you can copy the data by right-clicking or hitting export there as well. So many ways. We've decided to give you all the common ways of getting the data out of our software, whether that be a JPEG image, a bitmap, an Excel spreadsheet, Excel, Word, pictures, all the common formats. You have ways to get this out of here, as well as some PDFs. So we'll take a look at this chart up here, which is the next tab here. And again, this is setting up my plot chart. it won't plot some of the things over here. It will plot some of the others. I could put temperature in here, but it will plot that. But temperatures are usually numbers like 180 degrees, and I'm having low numbers like dBs of 31, 36. It would throw the chart off. So I click the chart tab, and you'll see what I mean. So it's just purely a number plot. So if I had to put temperature in here, this would have scrunched all this stuff up, which is the decibel reading down here, and had the temperature way up here. But play around with that and you can see what kind of chart you want. Keep in mind, while we can change what this chart looks like by coming over here in the legends, all kinds of different things. We can export it. Again, like I told you, you can right click and get some of these same options. A simple line chart is good. We see the baseline is in green, yellow is high alarm, red is yellow is low alarm, red is high alarm, and we can see over the course of time that it went above the high alarm. Problem. We can add notes in here by right-clicking and creating annotations. We can export this, we can save it, we can print it as a PDF. We could open that in Word, PowerPoint, whatever, use that to make notes on it, but keep it simple. You know, we could tag this as the high alarm or failure, and this as baseline or good, and anybody could understand, it went above the red line. We can play with the numbers to expand this out a little bit, since it has a lot of negative space up here. So since the highest reading was 52, we could put, let's say, 54 here. And then down here on the y-axis, the lowest reading was, it looks like 31. We could put maybe something like, by just clicking on the number and then changing it to 29, and it would expand it out to the entire screen. Same thing with the dates. We can click from what date to what date, or we can decide how many months backwards we want this to show. So instead of having 12 months, I could say display the last 3 months, and it would only display that. Many options in here to play with, but we've given you several ways to get this out of here as a reporting tool. Okay, you can also save it as a picture and attach that picture in here under the image file. You have that option as well when you hit save. So that would be nice as well to attach it in the record just as a historical information. Really, all of this doesn't work so well, especially for bearings, unless we've set our alarm levels. And we're not allowed to set alarm levels until we have the first set of readings downloaded, the baseline downloaded. So when we create the route, through building a route, there won't be any readings in here. And when I come to the alarm tab, all of it will be grayed out like this right now. Once I have a reading in here, and I do have several readings, but if this was the first set of readings downloaded, it would be in bold like this one, 10/23/2016. I highlight the first reading in the route, and then I decide what my alarms are. Typically, we go with 8 over a baseline for a bearing, for a lubrication point, 16 for a high alarm, the very first point of failure. Still gives us plenty of planning time. So we use the middle box typically, which is a delta value, meaning it's going to add the 8, whatever the baseline is on any of these bearings, and 16 for the high alarm over any of these bearings. So I would simply type, and what we could do here, really just to show you, I'll type some crazy huge number in here, 122 and 123, and hit update all the alarm levels, and all the alarms disappear, you see. So in fact, I can expand this whole thing out by hitting motor 1, expand all, and none of these readings, it's just a bunch of readings. And without the alarm set points, this is going to be a lot of data just to review. So we use the alarms to say, hey, this is what we're interested in. So I'll highlight that first reading. This is what it will look like when you do it the first time, all zeros. It'll be up here the same because there won't be any real high alarm. Remember, I typed those numbers in earlier to add that over. So we'll type 8 in this middle section using the delta values. I'll explain this up here in a minute. Using the delta values, I type 8 and I type 16 in the high alarm. And then I hit update all alarm levels using those deltas. And that gives me my alarm values, which will help me with the plot chart, obviously, and everything else. So you see, if you want to check it out, you can say This is the actual reading. So if we go to the record information tab on this reading, we see that that dB was 31 dB. So I'll come back to the alarms, and that's what that's giving me here, the 31 dB. If I add 8 over 31, that gives me 39. If I add 16 over 31, that gives me 47. If I come down to one of these readings down here, let's say record number 3, and we look at that one, 52 is the baseline reading. 52 plus 8 is 60. We see that up here in this box. 52 plus 16 is 68, and we see that in that box. So that's how we read it. If this was not the baseline reading, we would see this. And then we see the alarm state is okay, it's not an alarm. But if I highlight this reading that's in red, the reading was 49. It's not the baseline, that's grayed out, it's not green, and the alarm state is in high. So the information is here, and it's adding it correctly. If we want to set an actual value, not using a delta, a hard figure, and I don't know how you would really do this, but let's say every bearing on the conveyor, 57, anything over 57 dB is the low alarm, and anything over 75 is the high alarm. I'm just making up numbers. And I wanted to set that hard value, not a delta value, not adding it, saying if it goes over 57 dB, period, it's an alarm. We would type those numbers in these boxes here. So I could type 57 here, 75 here. And it didn't accept it because it was higher than the high alarm. So now I have to retype that. So now it will accept it. So 57 and 75. Then I hit update all alarm value levels using these values. And only a few things are actually over those readings. So it's not adding my 8 and 16 anymore. It's saying literally these numbers, if anything goes over these numbers, it's an alarm. That's a hard thing to do. The delta is much better to use because it treats each bearing individually. Now, if I wanted to set just one of these, let's say we use the 8 and 16 on everything. So let's go back and adjust. So I hit 16 for the high alarm and 8 for the low alarm. We'll update all alarm levels to get it back to where we were. So there we are. But let's say bearing number 2, the motor inboard bearing, we're going to set a hard value. We wanted something different. We could either use the delta. We could say, let's say it's a sealed bearing, and we don't care about lubrication. So I want something like 16 for the low alarm and maybe 25 for the high alarm, because I really don't want to push it to 35 where it's catastrophically failed. But still, I don't need that much of a planning stage on this particular bearing. I just type whatever numbers I wanted to add over, or I go ahead and add those values and type the hard value here, but I don't use these buttons. Once I type those, I close the plant. I'm not going to do it because it takes time. Close the plant, reopen the plant, and it will only update that one bearing and still leave the rest of them using the delta values or whatever you set previously. So just type it in the boxes on the one you've highlighted for that particular bearing, the first reading, and close the entire plant. So I'd right click, choose the close plant option, reopen the plant, and that would be updated. So that's how you individually set one alarm for one bearing. Otherwise, use the delta values. 8 and 16 as the suggested values to use that, and that keeps us going. That also helps us with our reporting tools. There will be another tutorial for how to do the exact reports, but this is the report section, and again, this is an overview. So in the report section, notice I have nothing highlighted but the plant. It's asking me to be more specific. It has nothing here. So we highlight the actual route name, the group route name. That is where I need to be when I make my reports, whether that be for leaks, whether that be for bearings. Depending on the application, if it's for leaks, we'll have a couple of different reports than we would for bearing. We wouldn't have a lubrication report for leaks. So depending on which section we're in this hierarchy, depends on what we have for reports. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit because that's a lot. So if I come over here to leak and I highlight leak, and I'm in the report section, and I highlight an actual route there, Notice I have the compressed air report, the mixed compressed gas report. I still have picture reports and everything report and an alarm report. Really, if you find a leak, it's basically an alarm anyway. So we typically use these two, compressed air report, mixed compressed gas report. The mixed compressed gas report is the same report that you would get from our app that you can find on Android or Apple tablets or phones. And we can export it through here by building a route or use the app. But as far as bearings, we'll go back to mechanical room. I'll close the leak down. And I have a bearing lube, master route, everything report. The 4-pick report allows you to put 4 images in there as long as you have them attached somewhere in that route, as well as any sound files. Up to 4 sound files can be embedded into it. And these are all Excel templated reports. And so all you do is highlight which one you want. Let's do a master route report or a bearing lube report maybe. Generate the selected report, give it a name, lube. It's on my desktop. I hit OK, and it generates the report. And then you would just go open up the Excel spreadsheet. Once you do that, you can adjust that Excel spreadsheet because it's just Excel. We're not going to actually go into the report tools right now other than what I just showed you, but that's all available to you. So choose the different ones, make the Excel spreadsheets. Once you open it up, you can adjust them. You can delete columns, add columns, whatever you want to do with it, but they're just templated reports, very good reports. Okay, dashboards, new addition to DMS 6. This is a quick view of what's an alarm, what's not an alarm, what do we need to give attention to quickly. And you can set this up any way you want to. You can expand this view to one big picture, but by editing filters, by using edit filters and the 360 days, what we want to that's going to show me what the last number of days were, and then using editing filters, we can actually decide what we're seeing in here, which groups, what bearings, whatever it is, comes up in this dashboard. And again, you saw the error message, but I wasn't highlighted in the right area for the edit filters, and there will be a tutorial how to edit those filters later. But we highlight the correct area, hit edit filters, and then your whole thing pops up of what do I want to see on my dashboard. So that's there as well. Versions, this is where you can go out and check for updates. You can have it automatically check for updates. I'll show you in a minute where to handle that. That is under edit preferences, if it's automatically doing it or not. But if you check for updates, if you're connected to the internet, it says DMS 6.6.7 is the latest version. It just checked it for me through the internet. And then the final tab is UE forecast. I'll click on it. That will be a whole different tutorial altogether. But this is for the UE forecast and basically how to set up each individual sensor, sensitivity, alarms, the schedule of recordings, and all of that. Once we set up the forecast, install those sensors, build the route, they'll all be listed here to what it's connected to. And you can set it up individually for every possible scenario. How it's triggered on, how it's triggered off, how the recording starts, how long, all of that is in this field view here. So if you don't have the UE forecast, then this tab or this button would be useless to you. But if you do have the UE forecast, this is obviously where you set those up. All right, so that's the basic overview of everything down here. Record information, images, history, chart, alarm reports, dashboard, and versions. We're going to look up here at this toolbar because there's several more things to show you. Open plant, we did. New plant, that's how we create a brand new plant. We can have many plants in here with many routes under many applications. Configure list, I do want to talk about that. If you remember, I told you there was a drop down. Let's highlight a reading. Let's go to record information tab, the raw information. These things here are called the list, the parameter information, I called them. So to edit what's in the drop-down boxes, we highlight an area or the name of the route, doesn't really matter which, and we go to File and Configure List. And depending on what I'm highlighted in is how it'll open, but notice it says generic for the application type. I need to choose bearing, and this will give me everything that has a drop down in it, and then I can simply type in here what I want to be available in those drop down boxes. Then I hit OK. Once I hit OK, that'll change what's available in these drop down boxes, not those, these over here under the list or parameters, these drop down boxes. And you can actually load that to the Ultra Probe, and it will show up in the Ultra Probe 10,000, 15,000, and parts of it in the 401 grease caddy. And you can choose those things while you're out in the field, or you can wait and choose them when you're actually reviewing your information after you've downloaded your route back to the computer. But they'll be available in these drop down boxes to exactly what you want. So let's go back to File. And under File, we have Import Export Database. That is typically what that's used for. It could be, you know, we have a route at a sister plant and we want to import it here and use it, but usually what it's used for is importing a database from the older versions of DMS once we've converted those from DMS 4 or 5. Whatever we built those routes in have readings. We don't want to lose them. We want to import them into the new DMS 6. We have to convert them. The old DMS versions were on an Access platform. This new DMS 6 is on a SQL server, so it has to be converted. Then we import it in. And it's a very simple walkthrough procedure. I click it, it asks me what do I want to do, where do I want to put it, and then if it's not working exactly right, I can look at the configurations and make sure everything's where it's supposed to be if I need to, but typically it works just right. I don't have anything that needs converting, but I would browse for the folder where that plant is sitting that has been converted, and then I would import it in here. And so where that's found is if you go to your Start under the programs there and go to Start and go to UE Systems, and I scroll down here, you will see UE Systems, and under UE Systems you have Ultratrend DMS 4.5 Exporter, and that's really the converter. You see Ultratrend DMS 6, which we're in right now. We also have, since we're in here, so that's the exporter, we export that, convert the old database to the new database, and then we would use that file import in here into this database. So then we also have Ultratrend DMS backup schedule. This was update, so if you haven't updated to the latest version, you may not be seeing the DMS backup schedule. The 6.7 is what has the backup schedule, but as you can see, you can set it up how many backups are saved. Once that, it starts deleting them and pushing the old ones out, so you don't have to worry about that. Cleaning up those folders. You have advanced where you want to save it, and to, you know, daily, one time, weekly, monthly. On the first, so basically I have it set up here on the first day, first Monday of the month of these months, I want it backed up, is the way this one is checked off at this time. So you can control exactly and where it's backed up to. Always good to have it backed up, and make sure you don't back it up to the same computer you're using, because if it's just a desktop or a laptop, laptop, you don't want to back up to that same computer, because if that computer crashes, then you don't have the backup. So you want it to either a network drive or an external hard drive or something like that. And then again, we started all that by going to Import Export Database, and where we got that from. We would convert the old databases if we needed to, and then import it once it's converted, and then exit out of the whole program, which is the same as hitting the X. All right, under Edit, we have Edit Preferences, just a few things there. General, what language are we working in? Those are all the different languages we have this in. Units, Standard, what currency, and those, the currency and the units, that's for parameter information, such as, you know, cost per mass, as well as some of the reporting tools or cost analysis tools. You would change what currency, and those are the currencies we have: US dollars, the pound, and euros. And then check for updates is there as well. Check for updates, this means it's going to automatically check for you. So if you get an error message because you can't hit the internet because of the security, in your company or plant, then uncheck that box so it doesn't keep trying, and you won't have that problem anymore. And then paths. The only path we have in here is the spectralizer path. This used to be different on the old DMSs. You had 3 different paths you could mess with, one of those being backup and then spectralizer and then DMS itself. That's all changed. We don't really want to mess with this path. If we have the second software that we provide, UE Spectralizer, the analysis software, that path is installed on your computer. They are linked. The 2 softwares are linked to one another. So if you mess with this, it'll lose the link. So leave it where it is, but that's what that's for, just in case. All right, and under communications, we have configure probes, and we have a configuring probe and how to upload and download tutorials available. But that just is setting up the software for when you send it to the 10,000 or to the 15,000 or to the older style 9,000. Those accept different bits of information and in different formats. So we have to tell the software how to do that. So we would use configure probes, and again, we have a tutorial on that, and what probes are selected to upload and download the route to. You can test the communications. And the clear instrument is only for the UltraProbe 9000 and 3000, where you can clear the memory of readings on those. For the 401, the 10,000, and the 15,000s, those are all SD or compact flash cards, and that's will not clean those flash cards off. You have to use Windows, open up the flash card through that folder, and then just delete everything on there. That's how you clean those. This is just for the connected by cable UltraProbe 3000 and 9000. All right, notifications, a new feature in DMS 6. Edit notifications, and this is literally anything that's in alarm. We can tell it what, when, where, who to send it to, and when through here. So you have notifications, contacts, email settings, and how you want that done. This can be used for the forecast notifications or just the regular hierarchy. You download it and it alerts whoever you want it to alert to, assuming that this software can reach the internet and send that notification out for that through text or via email. So I'll close that out. And then help, the user manual, which I'm going to open and show you. A lot of work went into that user manual. So when you have questions, this is a very detailed manual. You can download it and save it as a PDF, print it out. But it is a very detailed manual of how to do everything in this software, from backing up, converting the database, from installing it. Everything is here, which can also be downloaded from our website as well, the manual. Print that out, use it. Most of your answers will be in that manual. It is a good manual. You also have check for updates, which I did through versions, same thing. And then about Ultratrend DMS, this is version 6.67, and then how to reach us if you have lost our phone numbers, and even an email if need be, or website, I'm sorry, and the email info@uesystems.com is right there. And then the last thing, which has been a big help, this did exist in some of the earlier versions of DMS, but it's a log folder, and it'll keep up with any events of information if we had any kind of error messages. We use this, so when you call us and you said you saw an error message, and we say, what was the code on that? What was the error message? And you say, I don't know, I clicked out of it. We can view that event log. And when that opens up, we can see exactly what that error message, and many times by that code or that message, we know exactly what's wrong and can help you out quickly. So don't delete those, keep those. It doesn't reach out to the internet, it just opens it up through a browser. With that, that's the main functions of this, other than a couple of right-clicking options. So I'm shrinking this down, just kind of cleaning it up a little bit, but if I click Hayes Street and I right-click on that, you see you have expand all and collapse all. That's for the whatever level we're on. It'll expand it below that or collapse it from that area. Save a copy of the plant. That's very important. Sometimes you may have a database. Our technical support may not be able to do a go-to meeting type thing and actually see what's wrong. So you could save a copy of that plant, send that to whoever that technical assistant is, and he can open a version of that database, an exact copy of your database, and see what's going on, find out what the fix is, and then call you, email you, or whatever, and tell you what to do with the actual plant or route that you have. So very important, save a copy of the plant, and it saves the readings and everything. Close the plant. If I close it, then we won't be able to right click, but that just closes that particular plant we're in. New plant, building a route, again, which we do have a tutorial on, but that's where we would start that. Rename it. We can simply rename it, and all it does is highlight it and give you a cursor to rename that area. Paste, obviously. Restore deleted items, permanently delete, empty trash, show trash, all common Windows functions. So we could delete this plant completely right now. That would not be good for me. I wouldn't be able to show you everything. But if I come on down and we right click on mechanical room, the actual route, when I right click on this one, we get a few more options. Some of these are the same. Some of these are not. Expand all, collapse all, new location machine. So I can add a new machine and new test points in here as well. I can rename it. I can delete it, the entire route. It's not a permanent delete because I can actually bring it back if I delete it. Send the group to the probe, retrieve group from probe. So this is how I upload and download. I highlight the name of the route that I want to load to the gun. I right click on it, and I send the group to the probe. Once I go out and take the readings, I come back, I highlight the name of the route again, right click, and I retrieve the group from the probe. Again, a tutorial on how to do that is available. Copy and paste, obvious functions. Synchronize the grease fields. Group cleanup. This is new. This kind of lets us clean it up without deleting all the records, or deleting a certain amount of records by records older than a date, point, name contains. This gives you all the operators of how to delete what you want to delete. So, you know, if you've got a database that's 5 to 10 years old, you may have a lot of old readings that you're not interested in. The bearing has been replaced. It's just growing too much. We can clean it up a little bit this way. By doing so. Display the alarms on bottom. If you remember, the alarm groups I have are sitting up here in points currently in. Maybe I don't like that at the top of my route when it first opens. I can make that go all the way down to the bottom of the route by display the alarms on the bottom. I can actually hide the alarm location completely and not show it. Maybe I don't want to see that. Restore deleted items. So if I delete it, I can restore it here. If I permanently delete, I won't have that option available. I can restore just one item if I want to. I can empty the trash once I permanently delete. Once I empty the trash, it's gone forever. Show the trash before I empty the trash. So anything you delete in here is mainly Windows functions here. Just like your recycle bin, I can show what's in there. But once I empty it, it is gone. Okay, and so those are all those. And so if I come down here to the test point, I get kind of the same thing. Some of the same stuff we had. I could add a false historical record, create my own record, and it would give me a blank record information at this time and date that we're discussing right now. And I could fill it in manually instead of coming in from the field. Rename, delete it, copy it, paste it once I copy it. Set display length, set display only lasts 12 months. So in this sense, we're basically forming an archive of the records. I don't want to see 10 years worth of readings, but I want to keep all those 10 years maybe. So I'll say display only the last 12 months, or set the display length, you know, only the last 6 months do I want to see. And once that pops up, it gives me options of very simply, how many months do I want to see? Okay. Notice I'm on the actual reading or the name of the test point now to get these options. So remember, I told you earlier, it depends on where you're highlighted in that hierarchy of what information you get. And so then when I'm on the reading is where I was this last time. So, or maybe I was up at motor 1, but delete, copy, permanently delete. By the time we get to the reading, I go up to MOB. This was the display, the numbers, empty trash, show trash, we've discussed that. And each time I go up the hierarchy, I get just a few different items available to me to do. So with that, that's pretty much the overview of Ultratrend DMS. This is a database, and if we're trying to keep up with records, or especially trending for repeatability and seeing the slight changes that condition monitoring calls for in a good program, we need a database. This is supplied with the Ultra probes. It just takes time to build. When we build these routes, a lot of thought needs to go into building the route and baselining, and that's all the time-consuming effort. Once we get past that, all that hard work, the naming, marking test points, building good routes that are easy to walk, easy for the inspector to take the readings, not going upstairs, downstairs, downstairs. Get everything on the first floor, then go to the second floor, get everything there, then go to the third floor, get everything there. One side of the conveyor, then the other side, not back and forth. All that kind of stuff. Checking with safety if we need to. When we build these routes, take the time to do them properly and build them well, that pays off dividends down the road. And then, of course, to keep up with the amount of readings that you'll have, you need a database. So give us a call if you have any questions on this. If you need any help with it, let us know. We're available at UE Systems pretty much any time, by email, by text to your regional managers, or email us at info@uesystems.com if you don't know who your regional manager is, or call us 1-800-223-1325. Again, UE Systems, 1-800-223-1325, or email us at info@uesystems.com.